we are. That's right, which you've all been waiting for. The most famous and also most recent adaptation of the list of actions that are considered war crimes, as well as other codes of conduct when it comes to warfare and humanitarian stuff. If you're unfamiliar, the Geneva Convention itself is the core of all modern international humanitarian law, or IHL, and its sole goal is to protect the victims of armed conflicts. The Geneva Conventions of 1949 were, of course, a byproduct of the end of the Second World War, where many crimes against humanity and war crimes were committed. The first Geneva Convention was actually introduced, like I mentioned, in 1864, and was specifically aimed at creating rules around the treatment of sick and wounded armed forces on the battlefield. The Second Geneva Convention actually replaced the Hague Convention of 1907, and essentially contained everything from the First Geneva Convention and the Hague Conventions. The Third Geneva Convention was focused on the treatment of war prisoners and replaced the previous Geneva Convention, and the fourth and final Geneva Convention is the one we're discussing now, which is basically the all-encompassing Geneva Convention. The Geneva Gas Protocol states that the use of any asphyxiating, poisonous, or other gases and biological warfare methods are strictly prohibited and considered war crimes. Torture, inhumane treatments, including biological experiments, are also war crimes. Compelling a prisoner of war or other protected person, like civilians, to serve in the forces of a hostile power is a war crime. Depriving a prisoner of war or enemy civilian of their rights and a regular trial is a war crime. And instead of just repeating myself and saying everything's a war crime, everything I'm about to say is a war crime. Taking of hostages, unlawful deportation or unlawful confinement, any act that outrages personal dignity, specifically humiliating or degrading treatment of a protected person, any type of violence, murder, or mutilation of a protected person. You must search for, collect, care for, and evacuate without discrimination when it comes to prisoners of war. You must not attack medical transports or facilities. You must not deprive prisoners of war of food, clothing, medical care, and they must not do forced labor in dangerous or hostile conditions. You must protect one's family's honor and religious practices, and you must not make any indiscriminate attacks. In addition to these, you cannot use human shields, you cannot attack cultural objects or monuments, you cannot intentionally starve civilians as a method of warfare, and you cannot attack undefended or demilitarized zones. The underlying thesis is that these rules are supposed to prohibit unnecessary suffering across the board and specifically protect non-participants in the war, aka sick, elderly, injured, or civilians. And one of the biggest changes with the Nuremberg trials and the Geneva Conventions is the mandate for accountability of people who break these war crimes. But yeah, if you were like me and were shocked when you learned that there was rules to war and, well, a lot of them, you were probably also super shocked when you learned that, according to Geneva Conventions, if you come across enemy soldiers that are surrendering to you or injured, you have to essentially take care of them and treat them as one of your own, which is something I did not know at all.